Selamat pagi to you all, and thank you very much for having me here today. It's a great honour and privilege to be here today to be able to speak at this FIMM conference, and BNY Mellon Asset Management are very grateful for your time and your patience in listening to me today. My objective today is to share with you BNY Mellon Asset Management's views of the outlook for markets, the outlook for economics over the course of not just the next 6 to 12 months, but over the next 3 to 5 years, and in particular thinking about the impact that the financial crisis is likely to have over that longer period of time, and in particular thinking about what that actually means for taking long-term investment decisions on behalf of your UTC clients. Before I do that, though, I'd like to just share with you some information about our business. Some of you may well know BNY Mellon Asset Management already. I suspect a number of you won't know who we are, so if I may, I'd like to just share with you briefly to start with exactly who we are and exactly what our business does. BNY Mellon is the highest rated financial services organization in the United States. It's achieved that ranking by being a very well diversified business, and it's achieved that ranking by virtue of it avoiding almost all of the fallout of the subprime lending crisis in the US. As an asset management business, we are the 4th largest manager of institutional assets globally, with assets in excess of $1 trillion. Our asset management business itself is a multi-specialist business model. By multi-specialist, we mean we have 18 specialist investment managers located globally, each specializing in a very broad range of investment capabilities, from fixed income, equity, cash management, and unit trust investing. It is, we believe, a unique investment platform. The uniqueness is linked to the fact that we are one single business, BNY Mellon Asset Management, but BNY Mellon Asset Management is represented by 18 independent businesses with 18 independent chief investment officers, 18 different investment processes, 18 different investment strategies, investment philosophies, and that yields for us a very well diversified business. BNY Mellon as well has a commitment to growing our business globally. Right now, as I speak to you today, in Asia, we have offices in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, in Singapore, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, in India, in Hong Kong, in Seoul, in Beijing, in Shanghai, and in Australia. That reflects and represents our commitment to growing the BNY Mellon Asset Management business in this part of the world. I'd like today, if I may, to try and first of all pose and then answer 3 key questions. The first question really asks a key question that is going to help us understand where we think we might be going in the course of the next 6 to 12 months. And that's really, what were the causes and immediate effects of the financial crisis itself? Secondly, I'd then like to ask what the financial crisis means for the outlook for both economic activity globally and the outlook for markets globally. And finally, and I hope of most interest to you in this room, what does it mean for making investment decisions over the long run? What can we say, what can we do to take advantage of the conditions both at the economic level and at the market level that this crisis has created? And I hope I'll leave you with some interesting and hopefully implementable ideas for you to take back to your UTC clients. If you can stomach it, I wouldn't mind just spending a little bit of time reminding you about the financial crisis. It was a tough time, as we know. And I don't want to spend too long reminding you about it and dwelling on the past, but I think it's worth, certainly if we want to know about where we're going over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, it's really important to know where we've come from. And so I want to share with you what I believe were the 8 key factors that brought about the financial crisis, and in particular what we can learn about those 8 key factors that can help us understand a little bit about where we might be going. First of all, the bubble in the US housing market. A bubble that began with a generalized increase in US house prices that was linked quite largely to improving fundamentals. So fundamental and justified improvements and increases in US real estate values. But as with all bubbles, they began with investors starting to believe that prices could only go in one direction. What gave length to that ongoing and sustained increase in US house prices was a generalized reduction in the quality of lending standards that mortgage lenders in the US applied, and the growth of what we call the subprime lending market, where lower quality and poor quality borrowers were being allowed to borrow with almost no collateral, with almost no assets in order to buy property. The fact that this was able to take place was that innovation in the investment banking industry was making it possible for those mortgage lenders to move that risk of taking on those poor quality lenders and effectively securitizing those risks and selling them on to investors. A reason and a driver why we saw an ongoing appreciation of house prices. At the same time, those packaged securities, those collateralized debt obligations, those collateralized mortgage obligations that were being rated by the credit rating agencies, the rating agencies weren't doing a good enough job. They didn't fully understand the risks involved. They therefore weren't able to fully articulate those risks to investors, and investors who thought they were buying low-risk, high-quality assets were in fact buying completely the opposite. At the same time, regulators in the industry in the US failed to fully understand the implications that increasing leverage that was going on in the US banking system was going to have long-term detrimental impact on the stability of the financial system. But there's no point in packaging these products unless you can find somebody to buy them. And clearly what was also going on in the US throughout the latter part of the bull market in equities was investors seeking out yield. Interest rates, if you recall, through early to mid-2000s fell quite dramatically in the US, and investors were seeking yield, seeking returns, income returns. And these high-yielding, high-quality, according to the credit rating agency, instruments was a great vehicle for those investors seeking yield to achieve that objective. At the same time, the corporations managing the risk of these businesses took their eye off the ball. They didn't appreciate, they weren't following their own models for managing risk in their businesses. And finally, and arguably perhaps most important of all in terms of how the subprime crisis led to a more generalized financial crisis, was the extent to which accounting rules made these investment banks on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis mark to market the value of these assets that they held. Perhaps again, if you can stomach it, as I say again, just to share with you the timeline of the financial crisis from the beginning of 2007 to where we are today. In a period spanning not much more than 18 months, we saw a more than 50% decline in the value of US equities. That was mirrored by even bigger declines in equity markets outside of the US. And a decline in interest rates, policy rates in the US of 5.75% in the space of 18 months, going from interest rates in the US at 5.75 in mid-2007 to 0 by the time we reached the first quarter of 2009. An unprecedented decline in interest rates, just reflecting just how severe the financial crisis was. If we pick out, what I think are the important elements on this timeline to really focus on, and again bearing in mind thinking about the implications for the outlook for markets from here, I think the key turning point, I think we'll all agree, was the collapse of Lehman Brothers. It was at this point that the financial crisis became a global growth crisis, became a global economic crisis. Because at that point, people began to question the very stability of the financial system. A financial system that not only was supporting corporates in terms of allowing them to grow, it was also supporting trade and the finance of trade on an ongoing basis. It was a financial system that was supporting the growth of investment in new businesses.